This is Roberta Foster. Welcome to today's edition of the Author's Corner, brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word. And today I welcome Wanda Brunstetter back to Author's Corner. She has written a devotional called The Prayer Jar on Forgiveness, and is published by Barber Publishing. We're also going to be chatting with her about a novel called Letters of Comfort. So, Wanda, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Well, I have in front of me the Prayer Jar devotional, Forgiveness, but I understand this is not your first devotional writing.
No, it's not, actually. I've written a couple of them that were geared more toward the Amish theme back, I don't know, probably 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
But then more recently was a Prayer Jar devotional on the topic of hope.
Okay, and now you have tackled the very important topic of forgiveness. What led you to go into this direction?
Well, for one thing, I think forgiveness is a crucial thing. If you don't have forgiveness, you don't have healing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people hold things inside, sometimes for years. And it's not healthy. It can affect them physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So I think this is just something that everyone needs.
And so, Wanda, when you were touched with going into the topic of forgiveness, was there a specific Bible verse that related to forgiveness that was important to you?
Yes, actually, of course, there was many, especially as I began to delve into this topic. But one of my favorite passages is found in Matthew. It's Matthew 6, verse 14 through 15. Jesus was preaching to the multitudes, and this is what he said. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Mm-hmm. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes people forget that, and they just think they can harbor this bitterness forever, and it's not going to affect them in any way. I've seen it happen, even among friends and family, and it eats them up. The person they haven't forgiven isn't affected nearly as much as they are by harboring the feelings that they have and not forgiving.
Talk about the title or the overall title of your devotionals, The Prayer Jar. What is a prayer jar?
A prayer jar can be something as simple as a glass canning jar or any kind of a container. Usually people like to decorate them a little bit, or they can just be left plain. The one I use is an antique canning jar from my husband's collection. And so I didn't really decorate it because it is an antique jar and it's embossed, and I think it looks pretty just the way it is. So you go ahead and you write your prayer requests, like on a slip of paper. It could be scripture, verses, notes of thanks to God, or a specific prayer request. And then after praying the request or reflecting on a Bible verse, then you fold the paper in half, place it in the prayer jar. And then from time to time, I'll take it out, maybe one or two or more of the prayer jar requests. And if they've been answered, then I write the date on the piece of paper. If my prayer request has not been answered, then the slip of paper it was written on goes right back into the jar.
And prayer continues for those items.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. So tell us a little bit about the previous devotional that you had and what's coming up for the future.
The previous one, as I said, was on the topic of hope, which we all need that too. I think especially in today's world with the things going on around us, sometimes I've heard people say, I just wonder if there's any hope for this world. We all need hope, not just for what's happening in the world, but individually for our own lives and what we're faced with. So, and then the third one, which is coming out next year, and I'm just wrapping that one up, That is called the Prayer Jar devotional healing. And we need healing spiritually, physically, emotionally, from the things that have happened to us in the past and the things that are happening us now. Healing is crucial to our well-being.
And as you mentioned in talking about forgiveness, that is oftentimes one of the things that we have to offer to others and get past in order for that healing to take place, right?
Exactly. And sometimes it involves forgiving ourselves. You know, it isn't always somebody else who's hurt us. Sometimes we've done things that we know we shouldn't have done, or said things we shouldn't have said. And we should apologize, of course, to the person that we hurt. But sometimes we don't think about this. We're grieving over what we've done, and we don't realize that if we ask God to forgive us, He will. And then we need to follow up with forgiving ourselves.
Well, as you were writing your prayer jar devotional on forgiveness, can you share anything that may have been a real revelation for you?
I think, you know, the topic of forgiveness is something that I've dealt with myself over the years, because I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. And I think it was just a reminder of how thankful I am that I was able to forgive my parents for the things they did as when I was growing up. And my husband's in the same situation. His father was very abusive. And it really wasn't until he came to the point where he could forgive his dad that the dad could find his way to the Lord. And so I think as I was writing this, this came to light, and I was reminded of that and how it has affected our own lives by being willing to forgive.
Wonderful. Great testimony. Well, to our listeners, I want to remind you that I'm talking with Wanda Brunstetter, and we've been talking about her devotional called The Prayer Jar on Forgiveness. And now we're going to move on to discussing one of her latest novels. It's called Letters of Comfort. It's book 2 in the Friendship Letters series. And Wanda, why don't you give us some insight into the series that you're writing?
Okay, this series is really about 3 Amish friends who keep in touch by writing letters to each other, which is very common among the Amish. Now, they do make phone calls, but they don't sit on the phone and gab like we would be tending to do, although on occasion I've gotten on the phone with an Amish friend and they've chattered quite a bit. But most of the time they communicate via letters. They love writing letters. So these 3 friends are keeping in touch by writing letters to each other, but in addition to updates on each other's lives, their letters often contain words of encouragement if their friend is going through a difficult time. As I said, my husband and I have many close Amish friends, and in addition to the phone calls, we often keep in touch through letters and notes of encouragement. And so for this reason, I thought it would be interesting to write about friends sharing and helping each other via the letters that they write.
And so you actually delve into the topic of depression through this book.
I do. It's kind of a heavy topic, but it's an important topic. And with this series, actually, this series, one of the reasons in addition to the whole letter writing thing, one of the reasons I picked 3 heavy topics for this series is because I had Amish friends ask me to write about those topics.
Oh, wow.
They felt like it was something that their community needed. Not to say that all Amish are having depression, or as in book 1, dealing with alcoholism. That is certainly not the case. But when it becomes an issue, it's very serious, and they need to know how to handle it, how to get help.
Wow. Well, that's quite an honor for your Amish friends to come to you for that inspiration and assistance.
Yes, it is, and And I felt like because they did come to me, I would be safe in talking about a topic that is maybe a little bit harder for people to accept or to want to read about, because it's the topic of depression does not sound uplifting, but it certainly can be as you go through the process of healing from the depression.
Well, we've got two books that are similar in style, or not style, but similar in the goal is to bring people special healing.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So you mentioned another book that's going to be coming out. Can you give us some insight into that?
The third book in this series, the one that is really, I think, very impactful, is on the topic of abuse. And when an Amish friend brought that topic up to me and said, "Would you please write about this?" I was like, ugh, that's touchy, because I don't want my readers to think that all Amish, suffer abuse,
right?
Especially spousal abuse. So when I started to write this, it was basically going to be on child abuse. I knew about it well from having had child abuse going on in my own home, and especially my husband's. His was more physical. Mine was a little bit more on the emotional end. But as I started writing it, it kind of evolved, and I ended up touching on the topic of spousal abuse as well. So it's very broad range and can reach many more people.
And today I am talking with Wanda Brunstetter, and she has written the novel Letters of Comfort from the Friendship Letters series of books, as well as the devotional called The Prayer Jar, Forgiveness. So, Wanda, you are an author of many, many books, and so tell our listeners how they can find out about others that you've written and maybe be in touch with you.
Of course, my website probably is the main one, wandabrunstetter.com. I have all kinds of things on there, not just about my books, but about the Amish way of life. And my event schedule is posted there, many, many things. So that would be the top one, I would say. You can also find me on several social media platforms. I'm on Facebook in several places, actually. And let's see, there's Instagram, YouTube, several others that would give the information about my books.
Well, we have about a minute left to chat, and so some people may not be familiar with you. I can't imagine that, but some may not. How is it you have such insight into the Amish people?
For two reasons. One, my great-great-grandparents were part of the Anabaptist faith. It was a break-off from the original Amish. It was what they call the Dunkards. And I think just because I have that in my blood, I feel this closeness to the Amish. I always have. Never knew why at first until I discovered my ancestry. But also, we have made many, many Amish friends. And being with them, spending time with them, talking to them, has given me the insight that I need to write about them. And they tell me that they appreciate what I'm writing. They feel like I'm writing authentically about them.
That's great. So one more time, the books we've been talking about today, the Prayer Jar Devotional on Forgiveness and the novel Letters of Comfort, book 2 in the Friendship Letters series. And so, Wanda, thank you so very much for being with us today and sharing your heart with our listeners.
It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And as a reminder, if you missed any part of today's interview or would like to hear it again, you can find it on your favorite podcast platform or through kneo.org. This is Roberta Foster on the Author's Corner. Join us again next time.